The drone war's unexpected twist. How Ukraine became America's secret weapon against Iran a year ago. Donald Trump sat across from Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office and publicly humiliated him. He called him a salesman always looking to purchase missiles, always chasing American money, always coming back for more. The message was clear. Ukraine was a burden, a supplicant, a country that needed America far more than America needed it. 12 months later, America went to Ukraine hat in hand and asked for help. The world had turned upside down, and the reason it turned is a small, cheap Iranian drone called the Shahd. The problem America never prepared for here is the uncomfortable truth at the heart of America's current military predicament in the Middle East. The United States spent decades and hundreds of billions of dollars building the most sophisticated air defense network in history, layered systems, cutting-edge interceptor missiles, advanced radar networks, satellite tracking, artificial intelligence integration, the Patriot, THAAD, the Aegis. Systems capable of detecting and destroying ballistic missiles traveling at thousands of kilometers per hour, incoming from hundreds of kilometers away. And then Iran started launching waves of Shahd drones, slow, cheap, propeller-driven aircraft that cost between $20,000 and $50,000 to produce, unsophisticated. By the standards of modern military technology, individually not particularly threatening to a well-defended target. But Iran was not launching them individually. Iran was launching them in swarms, hundreds at a time, day after day, wave after wave, creating a relentless drumbeat of incoming threats that the most advanced air defense systems in the world were forced to respond to with interceptor missiles costing millions of dollars each. Every Shahd that forced a Patriot interceptor to be fired represented a trade that mathematically favored Iran, every wave that drained another. Battery of interceptors brought the defending force one step closer to the moment when the stockpiles run low and the math becomes catastrophic by the morning of March 6th alone. Gulf Cooperation Council states had confirmed over 2,150 interceptions of Iranian drones, missiles, and aircraft since the conflict began. The overwhelming majority were UAVs. The interception rate was high, but the cost of maintaining it was punishing and climbing with every passing day, and some got through. Iranian drones struck a luxury hotel in Dubai. One of Saudi Arabia's largest oil refineries was hit. A major LNG terminal in Qatar was struck. Communications equipment at the U.S. Naval Headquarters in Bahrain was damaged. The U.S. Embassy compound in Saudi Arabia was struck. A British military base in Cyprus was hit. 6 American service personnel were killed at a Kuwaiti position. The damage in absolute terms remained manageable. The psychological and economic signal was far more corrosive, and the arithmetic of the defense was becoming increasingly unsustainable. Ukraine, the country that already solved this problem while Washington was scrambling to recalibrate its approach to the Shahd swarm. One country had already spent years living inside exactly this problem and developing practical, battle-tested solutions to it: Ukraine. When Russia began deploying Iranian-supplied Shahd drones rebranded as geraniums against Ukrainian cities and infrastructure, Kyiv had no choice but to figure out how to defeat them cheaply and quickly. The solution Ukraine developed was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of firing million-dollar interceptor missiles at 30,000 drones, build your own low-cost interceptor drones priced at $1,000 to $2,000 each and use them to shoot the shades down before they reach their targets. Ukraine became, through brutal necessity, one of the world's leading manufacturers and operators of counter-drone systems. It accumulated institutional knowledge, not the theoretical kind produced in defense laboratories, but the operational kind forged in actual combat about how shades fly, how they navigate, what their vulnerabilities are, how to detect them, how to intercept them cheaply, and how to train operators to do so at scale. That knowledge is now worth more to the United States military than almost anything money can buy. President Zelensky confirmed the request publicly. We received a request from the United States for specific support and protection against shades in the Middle East. I gave instructions to provide the necessary means and ensure the presence of Ukrainian specialists who can guarantee the required security. A Ukrainian team had already departed for Jordan specifically for the Muwaffaq Salty Air Base, where U.S. military assets are stationed following a formal request from Washington. The U.S. Army separately sent 10,000 AI-enabled Merops interceptor drones, developed through a Ukraine-based defense venture, to the Middle East within 5 days of the start of Operation Epic Fury. The country Trump called a burden had become America's most urgently needed partner. The embarrassing gap in American war planning, the fact that Washington had to call Kyiv for help with a drone problem it had watched develop for years, is not a minor logistical detail. It is a significant indictment of American military planning. Iran's Shahd drone program was not a secret. Washington knew Iran had been supplying shades to Russia since 2022. American intelligence agencies had detailed knowledge of Iranese drone production capacity, estimated at up to 10,000 units per month. American analysts had watched Ukraine develop counter-shot tactics in real time and documented those lessons in reports that circulated through the defense establishment. And yet, when Operation Epic Fury began and Iran started launching shades in mass waves against American forces and Gulf infrastructure, the United States found itself underprepared for exactly the scenario it had observed being played out in Ukraine for 3 years. The disconnect was made stranger still by what the Pentagon was doing simultaneously behind the scenes. U.S. Central Command Commander Admiral Brad Cooper confirmed that American forces had captured an Iranian Shahd, reverse-engineered it, and produced their own version, a one-way strike drone called the Locust, which was then deployed offensively against Iranian targets. The Pentagon was sophisticated enough to copy the weapon and use it against its original developer. It simply had not prepared adequate defenses against it. Despite knowing Iran had stockpiled thousands of them and would deploy them massively in exactly the kind of conflict that was now unfolding, America reverse-engineered the Shahd. America did not build a cheap answer to the Shahd. That asymmetry between offensive adaptation and defensive preparation is the gap that Ukraine is now being asked to fill. Iran's warning to Ukraine, "You are now a target." Ukraine's involvement in the conflict has not gone unnoticed in Tehran. Ibrahim Azizi, the head of the National Security Commission of the Iranian Parliament, issued a stark warning via social media directed not at the United States or Israel, but at Kyiv. By providing drone support to the Israeli regime, Ukraine has effectively become involved in the war and, under Article 51 of the UN Charter, has turned its entire territory into a legitimate target for Iran. The invocation of Article 51 is legally aggressive and strategically calculated. Article 51 of the UN Charter preserves the inherent right of states to individual or collective self-defense in response to an armed attack. Iran is arguing that Ukraine, by actively supplying counter-drone systems and expertise used against Iranian forces, has crossed the line from neutrality into belligerence, and that Iran's right of self-defense now extends to Ukrainian territory. The legal argument will not withstand serious scrutiny. Supplying defensive systems to an ally does not, under any established interpretation of international law, constitute an armed attack against the supplier's adversary. Iran knows this. The legal framing is not intended to convince international lawyers. It is intended to send a message. The message is this: Ukraine, you are playing in a conflict that has consequences beyond the ones you have calculated. You assumed your involvement supplying drone expertise and interceptor systems to Jordan. Supporting American forces in the Gulf was safely contained within a limited role. We are putting you on notice that we do not accept that containment. We are watching. We are capable of reaching further than you think, and we are prepared to frame your actions as an act of war if we choose to. Whether Iran has the actual capability or political will to act on this threat against Ukrainian territory is a separate question. But the warning itself, placing Kyiv on a target list that had previously been entirely focused on the Middle East, represents a significant escalation in the geographic scope of this conflict. He's declared boundaries. Zelensky's calculation. Risk versus opportunity for Zelensky. The decision to involve Ukraine in the Middle East conflict is one of the most consequential geopolitical calculations of his presidency. And it is being made under conditions of enormous complexity. On one side of the ledger, the opportunity. Ukraine has, for 3 years, been the country most dependent on American military support, weapons, ammunition, intelligence, diplomatic backing. That dependency has been a source of vulnerability, particularly under the Trump administration, which has repeatedly questioned the value of continued American commitment to Ukraine's defense by becoming genuinely useful to the United States in the Middle East, providing capabilities America needs and cannot easily replicate internally. Ukraine transforms its relationship with Washington from supplicant to partner. It creates leverage. It demonstrates value. It makes the argument in concrete operational terms that Ukraine is not just a recipient of American generosity, but a contributor to American strategic interests in multiple theaters simultaneously. That is an enormously powerful position to occupy, and Zelensky moved quickly to occupy it. On the other side of the ledger, the risk. Iran has now explicitly named Ukraine as a legitimate target. Kyiv is already under continuous Russian attack. Its energy infrastructure, its cities, its military production facilities are all under regular bombardment. Adding Iran as a declared adversary, even rhetorically, introduces a new dimension of threat that Ukraine's government and military must now factor into its security planning. Iran's reach into Ukrainian territory through direct military action is limited, but Iran's ability to supply Russia with additional weapons, intelligence, or targeting support against Ukrainian targets is very real. and that indirect pathway to harm may be more significant than any direct Iranian military threat. The calculation Zelensky made is that the benefits of American partnership in this specific context outweigh the additional risk from Iranian threats. Whether that calculation proves correct will depend heavily on how the Middle East conflict develops in the coming weeks. The new geography of this war, what the Ukraine dimension of this conflict reveals more clearly than almost any other development, is that the Middle East war that began on February 28th has already stopped being a Middle East war. It is a global war conducted through overlapping networks of technology, transfer, economic pressure, drone supply chains, counter-drone expertise, intelligence sharing, and now explicit threats against countries on the other side of the planet. Iran's shades, originally developed in Iran, supplied to Russia, deployed against Ukraine, studied by Ukraine, reverse-engineered by America, and now countered by Ukrainian-developed systems deployed by American forces in Jordan. That is a single weapons system that has now touched for countries on 3 continents in a single conflict cycle. The supply chains of this war do not respect borders. The lessons learned in the drone corridors over Kyiv are being applied in the skies over the Persian Gulf. The expertise developed by Ukrainian operators in the fields of eastern Ukraine is now being transferred to U.S. personnel at a Jordanian air base. And Iran, watching all of this unfold, has decided that the geography of its declared enemies needs to expand accordingly, the arithmetic that will decide this war. Strip away the geopolitics, the legal arguments, the diplomatic signals, and the battlefield drama, and at the core of this conflict is a simple arithmetic problem. Iran produces up to 10,000 Shahd drones per month. Each one costs between $20,000 and $50,000 to produce, each one that forces a Patriot interceptor to be fired costs the defender millions of dollars to stop. If Iran launches 500 drones in a single wave and 480 are intercepted, the 20 that get through cause physical damage and psychological impact. While the 480 that were stopped cost the defenders approximately $480 million to neutralize, Iran can sustain that arithmetic indefinitely at current production rates. The United States cannot sustain it indefinitely with million-dollar interceptors. The only way to change the arithmetic is to intercept the shades cheaply, with 1,000 or 2,000 counter-drones rather than 2 million Patriot missiles. That is exactly what Ukraine has figured out how to do. That is exactly why America called Kyiv, and that is exactly why Iran issued its warning to Ukraine. Because if Ukrainian counter-drone technology tips the arithmetic back in America's favor, it threatens the core of Iran's asymmetric strategy. The Shahd is Iran's great equalizer. Ukraine may be America's answer to it. And in the skies above the Persian Gulf, the battle between those two realities is now underway, from burden to partner. The world turned upside down there is a certain historical irony that deserves to be acknowledged before this story moves on. The country that Trump dismissed as a burden, the country that was supposedly always asking for money, always dependent on American charity, always chasing missiles. It couldn't afford that country is now training American forces, supplying American operations, and providing the battlefield-tested expertise that the world's most powerful military lacked when it needed it most. Ukraine did not become useful to America by accident. It became useful because it was forced by Russia's drone campaign to solve a problem at scale that America had studied theoretically but never had to live inside. And it solved that problem not with the resources of a superpower, but with the ingenuity of a country fighting for its survival. In March 2026, that ingenuity is being deployed over the skies of Jordan and the Persian Gulf. American and Ukrainian specialists are working side by side at a desert air base, sharing knowledge about how to destroy cheap Iranian drones before they reach their targets. A year ago, the story was America helping Ukraine survive. Today, the story is Ukraine helping America fight. The world has turned. And in the drone corridors of this new global war, the most surprising partnerships are proving to be the most essential ones.